Hey everyone, this is Kenji. I'm at home here and I'm about to make some Caldo Verde. I apologize if I'm butchering that pronunciation. It's Portuguese. This is a Portuguese soup. Caldo Verde means green broth. So the green comes from collard greens. It doesn't have to be collard greens, but you can use you can use kale, or you can even use cabbage, something like that. But generally, collard greens or lacinato kale or mustard green, some kind of hearty green is what you're looking for. And we're going to pull these leaves off, get rid of the central stem. One time, a few years ago, I was on an episode of Guy's Grocery Games, and my final challenge, I can't remember what I was making, but I do remember I was grilling some kale, and I very stupidly forgot to take the central stem out, and I served it to the judges, and so I did not win that challenge. Anyhow, always take the central stem out of your collard greens and your kale. You can leave like the very top of it where it's a little tender on, but most of it's gonna be too tough to eat. So this is a very simple soup. Potatoes, kale, onion, garlic. That's what I did. Chicken broth, black pepper. Some recipes, I think I have actually even have one online, but there's some recipes that will call for Portuguese style linguiça or chorizo. You know, some kind of sausage that typically you'll add at the very end. But the basic recipe is just going to be your greens, potatoes, onions, and garlic. All right, so we're starting with greens, all finely chopped. Let me get a pan going here. That was about, 12 ounces of greens or so. I'm making a relatively small portion, but I'll leave a link to the full recipe. All right. So, collard greens going in. For that much, I'm going to add about half an onion, I'd say. This is a very big onion, so this is probably around 6 ounces of onion I'm adding. I like to slice this onion in almost every occasion. I like to slice my onions pole to pole, so from root end to stem end with your knife aligned that way as opposed to the other way. The only time I would do the other way is if I was specifically making onion rings, either for frying or for grilling. But when you cut your onion this way, it has a milder flavor because you're rupturing fewer cells, because the cells are kind of elongated that way. It has a milder flavor. You're rupturing fewer cells, so there's less of those sort of really super pungent compounds being created. And the texture, I find, comes out better when you're, especially when you're sauteing it. Makes it easier to tenderize. In the soup, it kind of melts in a little bit better. All right, we're just gonna add some salt to help draw out a little bit of the liquid from there. Feel free to add more olive oil. I probably added about a quarter cup there so far. Yeah, don't be shy with your olive oil when you're sauteing, especially in soups. A soup where the olive oil is the main ingredient, or is one of the main ingredients, you should feel fine about going heavy on it, and it'll all sort of get emulsified and add flavor in the end. All right, we're gonna let that saute down a little bit. I'm on kind of medium-high heat it. All right, so I've got now 3 Yukon Gold potatoes. The only reason I'm using 3 is because that's how many I had sitting on my shelf. For 12 ounces of collard greens, I would use probably, I guess this is about a pound of potato. That ratio seems about good, but it's all rough, you know. You just want enough potato. The more important part is the amount of potato to the amount of liquid that you have, because these potatoes, as you're going to see, we're going to cook them down, and they're going to completely break down and sort of thicken the soup. Little yellow potatoes like this are this sort of classic choice, but you can feel free to use whatever potatoes you have. You know, you do want something that's going to be somewhat starchy, so you wouldn't be able to do this with, like, say, a really waxy red potato, but a russet or a Yukon Gold, anything like that is going to work, or a mix. This soup actually reminds me a lot of, there's a classic Colombian soup called ajiaco, which comes from the Andes. It's a potato soup that is essentially, you take a couple different types of potatoes and simmer them down until the soup gets thick. Serve it with chicken and capers, onions, avocado, corn, and an herb called guascas. But anyhow, different soup, similar process. All right, so I'm going to cut these potatoes into quarters and then crosswise about a quarter to a third of an inch. Doesn't matter how precise you are there. You don't want it to be too fine, and you don't want it to be too big. You want it to be just these kind of thin slices. Too fine, if you cut your potato pieces too fine, actually, and the starch rinses out of them as they're boiling, they actually will never really soften properly, which is a weird thing about potatoes. That you would think that if you cut them finer, they would soften faster. But actually, if you cut them too fine, they don't soften at all. Those just stay in discrete chunks. So about quarter to third inch slices is sort of your maximum breakdown point for potatoes. The point at which they're going to break down the fastest when you start boiling them. Oh, last thing I forgot, a little garlic before the potatoes go in. Do that. 4 cloves is good. This giant cutting board, by the way, people have asked me about it. It's a booze block. I actually got it as a gift from my friend Nami at Just One Cookbook. I'll link to her. She is a wonderful site on Japanese cooking, and she's a very nice person. And she gave me when she was upgrading her own home cutting board, she gave me her old one. So that's where this came from. It's a booze block. It's really, really nice. You can never have a cutting board. Your cutting board can never be too big. Sort of my general philosophy when it comes to that kind of thing. All right. Smash, 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 smash. There are things that can be too big. Chef's knives can be too big. And cast iron skillets can be too big, at least for the job at hand. All right, we don't have to go super fine on the garlic. That's about good enough. You get it in there, just saute it lightly until it's fragrant. We're not really looking to brown anything at this point. I accidentally browned it a little bit, but we're not really looking to brown anything at this point because we don't want to, you know, when you brown garlic and onions, it gets that sort of distinctly sweet caramelized flavor, which is not really a flavor that I necessarily want in this dish. There are some dishes where you do want that, but there's some where you don't. I don't want it in this dish. If you want it, then you know you can caramelize those onions, and I'm sure it'll taste good. It'll just taste different. All right, potatoes in. And finally, some chicken stock. This is about 4 cups of chicken stock. You can use homemade, store-bought. It won't really make much of a difference to this dish. Obviously, I mean, homemade will taste a little better, but you're not relying on the gelatin of the homemade, for instance, like you would be for some other dishes. And you know, the kale or the collard greens in there are pretty powerful. It's all going to come out tasty no matter what. It'll come out better with homemade, but it'll be good with store-bought. All right, so now all I'm going to do is let this come up to a boil, and I'm going to make it boil just like boiling. All right, so once we're at a boil, give it a little stir. I'm going to throw this on a back burner because I'm going to use the front burner for something else. But now we're basically just going to let it simmer. We're going to let it simmer until those potatoes completely break down. So not at a hard boil, just at a bare simmer. And we'll let it go and go and go. It'll probably take about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes at least. So yeah, so all right. So I will be back in just about 45 minutes or so. And here we are. So I just got this potato masher. You can see, oh, where did my spatula go? All right, so you can see the potatoes already very broken down, just kind of on its own. And I had this at a sort of steady simmer the whole time. I did add a little bit more broth to here because it was starting to look a little too thick. So I added about another cup of broth into there. But here, now I'm just gonna take this potato masher. Now, if I had a little more patience, I would just let this continue simmering and topping up with more broth as necessary until the potato just kind of completely naturally broke down. And you'll actually get a sort of richer, thicker texture that way. It's a good way to make sort of potato leek soup also if you want a really sort of rustic potato leek soup and you don't want to like pull out the blender or the ricer or anything like that. But I'm just going to go with the good old masher here. So this is pretty much done as is. Let me taste it. But you can always let it simmer down more and get even thicker if you like it thicker. And this is also the kind of soup that'll get better texture-wise, especially the next day. Needs a little more salt. More black pepper. Try this one last time. All right, so I'm going to serve myself a little bowl of this right now. And again, this is the kind of soup that let it keep simmering. It's only going to get better. And like I said, if you want to add some chorizo or linguiça, Portuguese style, you can do that. Just simmer it, slice it up, and toss it in there. I think that looks good. It is good, delicious. This with some bread. It's what, like 5 ingredients, something like that? I don't know. All right. Caldo Verde. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, it's Kenji. There are 22 million kids in this country that rely on school lunches for nutritious meals. And with schools closed now more than ever, organizations like No Kid Hungry can use their support. So I'm asking you to join me. Click the link in the description below to donate some money. No amount is too small or too big. Thank you very much and stay safe. Bye-bye.